everybody. So tonight isn't a funeral for John B. Duff. He wouldn't want us to sit around feeling sorry for him. He hated whenever anybody felt sorry for him. Tonight is a celebration of life for John B. Duff. That said, I could totally see him throwing a fit about us using a clunky phrase like celebration of life. Should have planned ahead, John. Tonight we're going to laugh, we're going to cry, we're going to remember John for who he was, a 5'2" Latino man. When people come up here, we're going to have about 10 speakers for the first portion, and then there's going to be a bunch of food in the lobby for everybody to eat, and then later in the night at about 8:30 we're going to do sort of an open mic style. So if anybody wants to share a story or a funny moment or a memory about John, just come talk to me, I'll sign you up, and we'll do it like that. That said, when people come up here to tell their stories about John, don't hold back any urge to laugh or cry, and please let's clap and encourage anyone that comes up tonight and shares their John memories. This is on some level John's farewell comedy show, and it wouldn't be a John B. Duff show, John B. Duff comedy show, if you didn't make a couple people cry. So and no heckling. As his friend Chad Newsom said, in most cities, Duff had a couch to crash on. He had a huge impact on so many people from so many different walks of life. Most of us, we saw it online when John passed. Everyone shared their stories of how John had impacted them. Whether it was helping out with the first year of Portland's Bridgetown Comedy Festival by cooking meals for comics using whatever ingredients he could find in their sparse kitchen, all while quietly fighting cancer by himself, unbeknownst to the comics he was feeding. Or it was the silly jokes that he would create just with you and just to make you laugh. John produced and co-produced countless comedy shows in Winnipeg since 2005 and gave most of the stand-up comics in the room here tonight their very first stage time. As a fellow deceased comedian, Harris Wills said, "We're all horrible, we're all wonderful, and we're all just trying to figure it out." In those early years, he definitely saw way more horrible than wonderful, especially from me. But he stuck with it, and he stuck with us, and he kept giving water to those hacky little comedy seeds until he cultivated a hilarious garden that continues to grow in his absence. I first met John in 2007 when I performed on the Comedy Loser show at the King's Head Pub. After the show, I sat with John and some of the comics on the show. Everyone was super nice and polite about my dumb little skit that was awful. Except for John. Sitting across from me, holding a pint, he told me exactly what he thought about it. Not in a way where he was being mean or trying to discourage me, but in a way that told me he cares about comedy and I should too. He set the tone that night for our relationship and my relationship with comedy. There wasn't a speck of bullshit in John when it came to comedy. He expected everyone to work hard, be original, and above all, be funny. It was January 28th, 2018, when John called me for a ride to the hospital. I have to believe I was like the 10th person he probably called me that day. But I'm happy I picked him up. And I took him to the Health Science Center. I watched as he struggled with his leg to get in and out of the car. And I dropped him off at the hospital. He never really came out. It was almost exactly 1 year later he passed away. As you know, John was a stickler for timing. Over that year, I selfishly spent as much time as I could with John, watching Jets games, eating the worst food. talking about comedy, workshopping jokes, and just trying to make them laugh. We probably had 1,000 conversations and not one was ever serious. But we ended every conversation and every meeting by telling each other that we loved each other in a way that we knew ran deeper than the words. I would call him and he would call me quite a bit, and every time he would call or I would call, we would spend sometimes up to 5 full minutes just saying, "What's up? What's up? What's up?" For like seriously 5 minutes. I would often be leaving meetings at work. Well, I thought it was an important phone call from John, only to spend 5 minutes. Anyways, I don't have a job yet. He even had the nurses doing it at some point. I'm gonna miss John like crazy. He'll always be the voice in my head, encouraging me to be sillier, to be funnier, and to be honest. And occasionally referencing beer ads from the 90s. Cheers to you, John. We're going to bring the first speakers up now. The family, Crystal and Peter. Oh, yes. The whole group here. Okay, clap.
I remember that, Tim. I was actually at the hospital with him when he was doing that, and he was in a room of like with 3 other people, and I was so humiliated because he was doing it over and over. I'm like, John, quit it. It's so embarrassing. So I have so many great memories of John, but I'm just going to share a few that stand out for me. Our mom always used to call John her Peter Pan because he was the boy who didn't want to grow up. I don't know if he ever really did. He was always just a big kid. He loved to have fun, make everyone laugh. John never worried about rules or consequences. He just wanted everyone to be happy all the time, and he always lived in the moment. That's what I remember about him. I remember one time he was trying to make some money, so he was driving one of those Dickie D bikes where you drive up and down the street selling ice cream. It's like a big freezer on wheels, and you ring the bells on it, like for people who are too young to remember that. So the kids would know that when you're coming down the street to get their money out. Anyway, John comes by our house, and I was playing outside. I was probably only about 8 or 9 at the time, and he says, "Come on, I'll take you for a wee ride." So he helps me climb up on top of that thing, and away we went. Well, it was no wee ride. We lived on Ebby, which is right near Stafford and Taylor, and he took me all the way to Assiniboine Park and back, selling and eating ice cream along the way. And I'd have to hop off, like he'd say, we'd have to take the side streets, and we were constantly on the lookout for the cops. And when we saw one, he'd make me jump off so we wouldn't get caught. So we were gone for hours and hours, and I don't think my parents ever knew that I was even missing. It was different times back then, I guess. No helmet, you know. We had lots of fun together as kids, but one thing we loved to do together as adults was play Tetris. There's an old PlayStation at my parents' house, and we would just be sitting around, and John would look at me with a glint in his eyes, and he would just look and he'd say, "Bato?" And then we knew it was on. So that's exactly how he would say it, "Bato?" So we used to play against each other for hours, and the game would get faster and faster. And even though we were pretty evenly matched, I was often, usually always able to beat him at the last second, and John would get so mad at me. He'd sit there and he'd be swearing at me and calling me all kinds of terrible names that I can't really say here, but, well, rhymes with. And we would always argue about which one of us was the true Tetris master, but I think deep down he probably always knew it was me, but I know he'd kill me for saying that right now. John always loved doing stupid things to make you laugh. Like on Father's Day, he would purposely buy a card for our dad that would say, "You're like a father to me." Always stupid shit like that. Or I remember one time I was in Walmart with him and he just yells across the store like, "Did you get tampons yet?" And I wasn't even there to buy tampons, but he's just trying to embarrass me, of course. And I work in group insurance in a claims department, and he started doing this thing all the time where he'd call me at work and he'd talk in this little voice of an old Italian lady, and he'd say, "Hello, I have a big problem for you." And then he'd go on about needing to make a claim because of the flaps on his vagina were stretched out so long that the dog was chewing on them. Whatever ridiculous thing he would think of for that day, it was just always like off the top of his head, and I'd laugh so hard and my stomach would hurt and I'd be crying, and just when I thought he was done, then he would just kind of pause and then he'd go, "Also," and then he'd just keep going and going. So anyway, that was kind of a thing he'd do with me whenever I answered the phone, or he'd leave me voicemails like that, and I just wish I was able to hold on to some of those so I could play them for you today, but so John made me laugh a lot, but he also drove me crazy most of the time, because anyone who knows him knows he wasn't much of a planner, and everything was always last minute. So if we're going to a family dinner and we're starting at 5, I'd get a call from John at 5 o'clock asking me if I could pick him up. And I remember one time he called me because he had to sell 20 tickets for a comedy show he was part of, and asked if I could sell them at work, and I'm like, "No problem. When do you need them back by?" "Yeah, tomorrow would be good, yeah." That was just him, though. He was always spontaneous, never thinking ahead, and always living in the moment. This last year was really difficult, and when I went to visit him in the hospital one day, I picked up a couple burgers for us, as usual. And we just sat there eating quietly, and he looked over at me and he said, "Isn't this nice, just the two of us sitting here enjoying a burger together?" There he was stuck in the hospital bed, already lost the use of his left side, and knowing what was to come, but he wasn't thinking ahead and worrying about what the next year would bring. He was there with me, living in the moment as always, and enjoying a burger with his little sister. I love you, John.
Now I know I should want to go first, because half those things are what I'm talking about. Okay, so John lived his life his way. He always lived for the moment, not really a long-term planning kind of guy. It was all about enjoying the time and the relationships with whoever he was with and wherever he was. He was a compassionate, empathetic person who would often put other people's needs before his own. When he's working as a chef, he used to make huge pots of soup and sandwiches to pass out to homeless people. Whenever you were with John, you felt cared for because he always had your back. When we were younger, I always looked up to my brother. Well, I had to because he's 6'6", or whatever it was. Whatever he was doing was what I wanted to do. I remember John always had a plan to make extra money for things. We used to go down back lanes with my little red wagon and collect pick-a-pop bottles to return for a refund to get candy. We had a paper route together also. And would come home freezing cold in the wintertime. Our dad would put our hands in his armpits to warm them up. One time when we were young, John saw someone having a yard sale. He said, "Hey, Peter, we could do that same thing and get some money for toys." He was big into Fisher-Price people and liquor nuts at that time. We started to clean out my upstairs bedroom of all of its contents. Books, clothes, toys, and bedding all out the window. Lowered down by bed sheets tied together. We were trying to get the mattress out the window to jump down on, but we were caught by a neighbor who let her parents know what was going on. They were not pleased. John had ideas of fun that could be considered pushing the limits of personal safety. Pellet guns, fireworks, bows and arrows were just a few when we were younger. John and I had a traditional arm wrestling match every time we had a family gathering. He would desperately try to beat me. In my family, we always say hello and goodbye with hugs, a legendary skill passed down from generation to generation. I would always tell John that I was proud of him whenever we said goodbye, and that I loved him. And of course, his last words to me were, "I love you."
My turn. Alright, so I'm going to call this story the story of Crouton. It starts like this. Hi, my name is Shane Duff. And my Uncle John, who I love very much, and I promised I wouldn't cry, and I'm about to. I loved him a lot, and I'm really sad to see him go. Oh! It's really hard to do. I'm trying to not cry, but it's... Better like that. Sorry, I just have to swipe through all the folders on my phone now. Alright, speech. My Uncle John was very busy and often miss out on family events. And so he would sometimes miss my birthday or my brother's birthday, but he made it to this one very special one. So he took both Brody and I out to get birthday gifts, and he said we could have anything we want for a price tag of $40. So that was the push I needed. So with that, Brody probably got something logical. I can't really remember. Like, you got flannel? That's logical. I got a huge stuffed animal that I later named Crouton. It's like this tall. And if I was with my mom or my dad or even my Auntie Crystal, who, like, I think this is pushing it, you would have said, no, just go find something else. But my Uncle John was the type of person who said if you wanted it, you could get it. And I'm so glad that he said that we could, because you might think it's all not practical, but me, I sleep on that thing every night. Like, that is the most comfortable pillow ever. Just pick one up for like 39 bucks. And like, if it weren't for my Uncle John, he wouldn't have got me into magic, which I love magic. Even though if I don't show it, I want to be one of those magicians who can make myself just disappear and then reappear somewhere else. I'm really upset that he can show me all of his tricks, but I'm glad I got to know what he taught me.
All right. Coming up now is one of John's oldest friends, Paul Mandela.
See how this goes. So, I slept like a baby last night. I woke up screaming for no reason and I shit the bed. That was the first joke I ever saw John perform on stage. It's always been one of my favorites. I was a little worried about saying shit, but after vagina, I could have went a lot deeper if I had known. I, in fact, did not sleep well last night. I've both dreaded and looked forward to tonight. I've dreaded it because John always teased me that if I had to speak at a memorial service for him, I'd cry like a baby. And I fear he was right, so we'll see if I can keep it together. I've also looked forward to tonight because I live in Ottawa, and I cannot be physically close to John. This is even the hard part of my speech. During his final battle with cancer. But tonight I'm in a place that he loved. And I'm surrounded by people who loved him. So that helps me feel closer to John, and for that I'm grateful. I met John approximately 35 years ago. And I recall when I met him, I was struck by his size, not just his physical size, but the size of his personality. He was so outgoing and loud, so very loud. One second. Yes. My legs are shaking so bad I'm going to fall down if I keep standing. So, John eventually moved to Vancouver, and I lived with him there for 2 summers. The first time, I shared a room with him. He had his futon mattress, no frame of course, and I slept in what amounted to a nest on the floor beside him. The second time I went out, he was living in a different apartment, and my accommodations had been upgraded. I slept in what was supposed to be a small dining room, and I shared it with another roommate's pet rat. Those were 2 of the best summers of my life. Money was tight. I worked as a dishwasher the first time, and I was unemployed the second time around. John always brought me home food from work, usually fettuccine alfredo with prosciutto and peas wrapped in tin foil. And when I was out of money, he always paid for the necessities, which essentially consisted of beer and cigarettes at that time in our lives. My time with him in Vancouver cemented our friendship. And I grew to further appreciate his many, many qualities. In addition to being so generous, he was fiercely loyal. If you were one of his people, he always had your back. Going out with him to rather sketchy bars in Vancouver to play pool or see punk rock bands, I kind of felt like I was Chris Makepeace in The Bodyguard. If you're under 40 years old, you probably don't get that at all. But he always had my back all the time. He always wanted to entertain others, obviously. Everyone knows that. Whether it was through art, magic, cooking, or comedy, if you were happy, he was happy. He always championed the underdog. He despised bullies. He loved cats, which is a plus for all you dog people out there. He had an inquisitive mind, and he always was interested in learning new things. And of course, he was quick-witted. He had an amazing appreciation of the absurdity and silliness of everyday life. He could also be extremely vulgar, which I loved. There were countless occasions where we would try to work on a bit together, and it would get out of hand eventually, and one of us would emphatically say to the other, "What's wrong with you?" Of course, there's nothing wrong with either of us. John was also stubborn, sometimes painfully so. Anyone who ever tried to stop him from paying a check or a bar tab learned that quickly. He was quick to share his opinions. He did not shy away from a debate. He could be surly, especially before noon, and you quickly learn not to poke the bear. He could be reckless. When we were younger, you risked your life every time you got in a car with him. He was a madman behind the wheel. I don't think that ever changed, actually. He could be demanding, but in the end, he always gave more than he took. After John moved back to Winnipeg, we set a goal to see a hockey game in every NHL rink. I think we managed to visit 13 of them. We had a trip to California and Las Vegas booked, plane tickets and all, when he was admitted to hospital for the last time. At one point, after he was diagnosed, and his prognosis was clear, we were talking on the phone once, and he said to me, he said, "I just want more time." When John's illness progressed to the point where it made it very difficult for him to communicate with me by phone or even by text, I'd find myself lying in bed every night, trying to will him into my dreams. I just wanted a healthier and happier version of John. Since his death, I've been doing something different. When I'm sitting at home at night and my wife and my son are asleep, I hope that John, it's ridiculous, will visit me as a ghost. He would love to hear that. I'm sure we'll get into a long discussion about what form he would take as a ghost and exactly how he would go about haunting me. Every version would be ridiculous, and most would be profane. When I'm sitting at home alone at night, I want so badly just to look over. I just want to look over and see him sitting nearby. I want to talk to him about hockey or comedy. I want to play a video game with him. I want to plan one more trip with him. Every day now, I find myself thinking, I just want more time. I just want more time. John's death has left a void in my life that I know will never be filled. I know I'm not the only person here who shares that thought. But John would want me, he'd want all of us to move on. I know he'd be angry with me for being so sad. He would say something like, "I'm dead, you're not. There's nothing we can do about it. Go live your life, you idiot." Well, for now I'm sad. And that's not going to change anytime soon, so screw you, John. But I'm also so grateful that I was lucky enough to have him in my life for as long as I did. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry if I keep sounding like I'm hosting a comedy show. I don't mean to next comic coming up on stage. You're gonna love him. Please welcome to the stage Ted Turner.
Well, John, puck drop was at 7. When's puck drop? Always. Wouldn't even be a game. I would just tell him, oh, soon, John. Soon. I started telling him the Jets would win games that they didn't win. Games that weren't even played or scheduled. Not even in hockey season. Okay. Oh, how do you do this? John Duff was big. I guess the emotions start like that, eh? John Duff was big, right? Big personality, big heart, big imagination, big impact. John Duff was big. Whew. Really big. John Duff was an artist. He was an artist at high school, and by that I mean he was actually an artist at how he did high school. So I did that with him. We'll talk about that later. He was an artist with a sketchbook. He was an artist with a deck of cards. He was an artist in the kitchen. He was an artist with a microphone. He was an artist on this stage. He was an artist in that hospital bed. He was an artist with people. He was an artist with life. John Duff was an individual. He didn't really need a lot of approval for his opinions. John Duff would tell you about the value and beauty of comics and cartoons long before there was anything even known as a graphic novel or an animated feature. I remember in high school, Pee-wee's Big Adventure came out. We were in school and John was just raving about it. Got to see it. It's fantastic, he said. He was telling me, and I said, well, that sounds great. He said, no, it really is. I said, what? It sounds hilarious. It sounds really funny. He said, no, I mean it's a great work of art. And that's the way John was. He was the same way with the rock lyric. That was a connection for us, a big connection in high school was music. And John would see the power in the words in a pop song. It carried just as much meaning as anything written in a poem or a novel. John was an improviser. John just kind of winged it. He didn't plan. We touched on that a lot. He just made things happen. And that was a contagious, it was magical quality John had. I remember in high school I've told the story on the radio if you heard it before, but when Paisley shirts were coming back in style, mid-80s, early 80s, mid-80s. And so we went to like Le Chateau, the Bay, wherever it was, and we'll get a Paisley shirt, these are great. They were like $25. It wasn't happening. Not for me anyways. I went home dejected. Next day, John comes to school, he's just got his pajama top on. He's like, I already got one of these. Plus I slept in it. Bonus. But John was uncompromising and honest. Always honest. John would tell you what was on his mind, always. And as many people have touched on earlier, it wasn't always what you wanted to hear. It wasn't ever gentle. I was going to say always gentle. But for John, it was the truth. And most often than not, it was in fact true. And it's something that I've come to appreciate more and more about John and thought about a lot since we've lost him. I'll leave you with this last one. I have many other things I'll do for the after party that I think I should do here. But I was watching a hockey game with John a few months ago, and a commercial comes on, and it's some kind of a thing for these kids are in some kind of contest to make a movie. And they were saying what they would do if they won the contest, right? It's a nice thing. First kid is like, I'd give back to those less fortunate. Okay, nice. Next kid, this kid's on a beach. This kid's standing on a beach and says, I clean all the plastic off this beach and clean up the ocean. I said, wow, that's an impressive kid, you know. Like, who could have an issue with that? Well, John Duff. He'd been silent up till, for a long time actually, and suddenly, John just says, these kids have zero imagination. Then next, what he said, that's what I'll leave you with, is something that's so powerful. And I felt it in the moment, and I've been thinking about it a lot for the past few weeks. He said, be inside the movie. Be inside the movie. And he meant it. That was how he saw the world. It's how he lived his life. And it's really good advice. It's a gift. Thank you.
All right, now we're going to hear from one of John's early comedy buddies. Goes by one name. Give it up for Keener.
Hi. So I'm one of the guys that met John through comedy. It was actually the first time I'd ever done stand-up was at one of his nights, and I thought I'd done pretty good. But he didn't say anything to me at the show. He called me the next day. He's like, hey, it's John hosting last night. It's like, and I was thinking like, well, he must think I've got a lot of talent. He's like, hey, that virgin joke you told. I'm like, yeah. He's like, did you steal that? I'm like, no. He's like, okay, I thought I heard it somewhere before. No, John. And that was the first time I understood this guy is serious about comedy and has no qualms about confrontation. Which is always something I admired about him. I don't like confrontation. I try and avoid it as much as possible. Where John looked for it. And I admired that except when I was in a confrontation with him, I did not admire it. But he was one of the most creative and on the spot funny guys I'd ever met. I always wish that I could be more like him to find the humor in something immediately. And I just admired that about him. And I made this shirt. I was just talking to Paul about it backstage because I remember John made it because he worked with me for a while. And he used our graphics guy to design this shirt that's just a vulgar drawing of a pig/dog. It's called Pig Dog Productions. It was something Paul had drawn, and he made the shirt, and he's like, I love this drawing, it makes me laugh every time I see it. And he's like, because it's just stupid, there's this just snake tongue. Paul was telling me just now that it was also cleaned up. He used to have a penis and it used to be defecating and stuff. So So I saw that in my files the other day, and I was like, I gotta make this shirt because John would be very happy to see it here if he could have, or if he is haunting us or something. But John, like, I have just a few things about like John and how he would just walk the line and sometimes cross it in being inappropriate, just for the laugh. And it was just, it's inspiring to see someone go so far for a laugh. Like one of his first advice, some of his first advice to me when I first started doing stand-up was, take what you're thinking about to a cartoonish place. Like, make it so absurd that it could only be recreated in a cartoon. And I often try to do that. Like, that goes through my mind anytime I'm trying to write something. Like, how wacky can I make this? And it took me working with him and seeing him, like, daily to realize, like, John's a cartoon. Like, just the way he acts and how he talks and his facial expressions, like, and things he did, like he used to hide behind the washroom door and scare people when they came out of the washroom, like at work. I had to talk to him about that. Or one time he wiped out on his bike coming to work because he was always late and he wanted to make it because we always had a meeting at 9 o'clock. And he comes flying in the door sweating, like blood dripping down his legs, like, "Come here." And then we're all standing, like, ready to have the meeting, and he's just there, like, stretching, blood dripping everywhere. And we're like, "John, can you clean yourself up?" He's like, "What? We're in the middle of a meeting." This one time, me and him were in the car with my mom and my aunt at Confusion Corner going north, and a car was turning left to go south on Osborne, and someone threw something out the window and hit our windshield. And John's like, "Follow that car." It's like, "No, John, I can't, we're Confusion Corner." And he like grabbed the wheel, turned it. I'm like, "Okay, well, I guess we're Starsky and Hutch now doing a U-turn at Confusion Corner." My mom and aunt are in the back going, "No, John, we don't need to do this." He's like, "Speed up." We caught them. I had to pull in front, like wedge them into a corner. John gets out of the car. My mom's like shaking. She's so scared of what's going to happen to John. He comes back with $20. Get $20 for a car wash. I just want to, he had me over for the 2006 Grey Cup because he said he was going to have a bunch of comedians over, and this was a year after I started doing stand-up, so I was like looking forward to hanging out with all these comedians. I got there and it was just him and Chelsea. And he's like, "All right, so who's playing?" I'm like, "Who's playing the Bombers and the Riders?" He's like, "Oh, I don't like football." And every time I told this story about him not liking football and having a Grey Cup party, he's like, "The food was great though, right?" Like, of course the food was great, John. He was just such a good cook, showing up at my parents' barbecue with his watermelon and vinegar and feta concoction. That someone, I think Andy was telling me that he just brought plain watermelon and John would get mad when anyone would have it. But the last thing I want to tell you is, like John pushing the limits. He sometimes pisses people off because they don't like hearing how they didn't do good, and his pushing the limits with his comedy was just such an endearing thing that I loved. I would laugh no matter how inappropriate he was being. And this one time at my work, we used to shoot this live video talking about products called KJ Live. And Joe Daly, a classic Jets goalie from the WHA years, was one of our clients, and his wife brought in a jersey for herself to get Hellebuck put on. And I said in this thing, like, yeah, Joe Daly's wife, she likes goalies. And John's like, yeah, she's a GDL. After that, I'm like, did you seriously say goalie dick lover on our live broadcast? Like, it was highly inappropriate, but amazingly funny. I couldn't deny it. It's just, and it's just, I'm glad I got to spend that time with John. It was close to the end, and even when he went into the hospital, he used to invite everyone over to watch Jets games at his place, and then once we all found out the news, like almost every Jets game, the place at John's hospital, wherever it was, at the Health Science Center of Poseidon, or at the Riverview, was always filled with people, and he's like, geez, try to get people to come over to my house when I'm healthy. It was crickets. I get cancer. It's standing room only. And I was just like, I'm sorry, man, that it's like that. Like, you know, we were talking, like, you know, we get busy, we got caught up in our own lives, and we feel we don't have time for this kind of stuff. But like, when it's too late, then you're like, why didn't you make more time? And yeah, it's just a mistake I hope I'll never make again with any of my friends. And I'm just glad everyone's here to say goodbye to John. Thanks.
Now we're going to hear from another member of the Duff clan, Chris Duff. Yeah.
I'm probably going to swear a lot more than other people did, so I apologize in advance for that. Most of that's just because I spent a lot of my formative years with John. Yeah, it seems like I won't cry when I'm sitting down there and you're looking at all these people and you're like, fucking pussies. And then you get up here and you realize, my earliest memories of John are when he lived with us out in BC. I don't even remember him moving in or anything. He was just there, Slurpee in one hand, cigarette in the other, some sort of unusual shirt on, paisley, plaid, tie-dye, you name it. Back then, we were small and John was a giant. We would wrestle around and climb all over him. He would like hold my hands and I would walk up him horizontally until I learned the comedic impact of a crotch kick. Jesus, fuck! And then he'd try it again, next time we see him next Christmas or something, and he'd be like, bugger off! One time when John was babysitting, I was 4, my sister was 6, and we were doing what any kids in the 80s would do, have a dance-off to the Chipmunks adventure movie. Of course, like anything related to Alvin and his chipmunks, shit got out of hand. Next thing I know, I busted my forehead off a coffee table and cue John and his complete, absolute inability to deal with blood. He was also new to our area and hadn't a clue where the hospital was, so he enlisted the help of my 6-year-old sister to find where the hospital could be. This is just what you did before the internet. I remember even at 4 how panicked John was, which for those of you who might find yourself in this situation in the future is not a great way to calm a bleeding child. All said, I woke up from my sedation to a pack of M&Ms in one hand, Fun Dip in the other hand, 4 stitches and a lifelong guilt trip across the window of my forehead. Turns out it was just a long line of poorly handled babysitting injuries in the family. Sorry, Brody. As a kid, John did magic tricks, like making a cigarette disappear. making a lit cigarette disappear. Or less dangerously, a coin. He taught us how to swear at my mom in Spanish. So to a kid, he was so cool. As I got older, I realized that John wasn't really that cool. That wasn't the joke. He was a nerd about pretty much everything, but he wasn't just a nerd. John was a gatekeeper. Gatekeeper, if you don't know, is the type of nerd that doesn't want to let you in on this inner circle of things they like. Oh, so you like real dragons and warlocks, eh? And then answer me these questions 3. And then immediately discount your opinions based on some random arbitrary fact. That's a gatekeeper. I think that's why he loved magic. The entire art is based entirely around this community and gatekeeping and keeping privileged knowledge away from the normals. But the thing about John was that he wasn't just your traditional gatekeeper. Usually one becomes a gatekeeper to exercise their power and superiority. It's a flex, a big FU to the society around them. And while John may have flexed that way in many fields, most important to him was the protecting the integrity of his space, looking after his people. He ranted in 2011 how he would refuse to cheer for the Winnipeg Jets team, or the Winnipeg NHL team if it weren't named the Jets. I remember he called me one time and screamed at me. And he was like, if they aren't the Jets, they aren't my team. He hated Michael Bay with a passion because, well, Michael Bay ruins everything good in cinema. And he was furious if you liked movies that were too Hollywood or wrapped up in a bow. Tenfold if they had been adapted from a book. You should have heard his fury as we walked out of the final Lord of the Rings. Living with John, he was judgmental of everything I did. I was 18 when John offered that I move in with him and get my shit together, which was probably the most irresponsibly generous thing he ever did. And for some time probably ranked up there with one of his most regrettable decisions. Think about it. Take the worst 18-year-old you know, and then voluntarily live with them. But for John, it was more than just my shit manners and my try-hard attitude. He was annoyed with everything about me. My hockey allegiance, I enjoyed the Canucks. He enjoyed pretty much any other team more. At the time, he cheered for the Sens. He hated what movies I liked, and was always appalled at what I had not yet seen. See, you've all been in that boat. He also hated my music. Occasionally, the Venn diagram of my taste and his would cross over. We had a burnt CD that we had to duplicate eventually because we'd both fall asleep to the Finding Nemo soundtrack. We shot the shit a lot listening to or watching Family Guy DVDs. Just like he would break down certain scenes and we'd rewind it and watch it again. Like when Peter hits his shin and he's like, ah, ah, and he goes on like 20 times and we just watch that over and over again because John just loved the comedy in it. One time I was listening to a song from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and he was almost proud. And just when the bright, warm light of credibility started to shine upon me, I made the mistake of telling him I'd never seen the movie. As if you've never seen The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. The movie's a classic! Of course, he forced me to watch it and took extreme joy in doing so. Then he showed me his other country, or his favorite westerns. And when I finally succumbed to liking his likes, we had a truce. Until I told him I'd never seen To Kill a Mockingbird, and it started all over again. But that was John. As judgmental as he was about your taste not matching his, he was even more excited to show you, to assimilate you, molding you to his likings. That was John's reason for gatekeeping. He wanted to know more than you, but only so he could show you to share his perspective on the world. And despite our differences, John always included me, often asking me to come along with his friends, even if he had plenty of reasons not to. It was just one of the ways that John was unconventionally generous. And it's also because of his judgment that some of his compliments meant so much. When he said he was proud, that meant something. My greatest lesson from John wasn't my manners or a new taste in movies. It was how he taught me to have an open mind, and that things aren't often black and white. I loved metal, and he hated it. The music, that is. All of it. Something too aggressive, mongoloid, something or other. It's too angry, too aggressive. And it formed a great divide in our relationship. One time I was listening to System of a Down and playing on the guitar, and he came in singing. Maybe it was Aerials, or maybe it was Toxicity. I can never remember which song, but when I play my guitar, he'd say, "Hey, play that System of a Down song." And I always played the wrong one. He'd be like, "No, that song is garbage. Do the one that doesn't suck." And when I tried one time to smugly tell him that he shouldn't like it, he said something that resonated with me. "I can hate a genre, but like a song from said genre. I don't have to like so-and-so as a person to like their music. I don't even have to like their music to like them as a person." He was talking about music, but he applied it in many other ways. And of course, now I do too. Funny thing is, as stubborn as I remember John, he would live in a constant dichotomy between his expressed opinions or values and his own lifestyle. Take John's relationship with food. On one hand, he was so pretentious about food and chefs and the entire industry. He once railed me for being in the restaurant industry and not knowing what a julienne cut was. I was 18 years old, working part-time at Zeller's Diner. On the other hand, he would eat the shittiest Domino's, KFC, Little Caesars takeout until he was broke. And then when there was no more money and no more takeout to be had, he would Iron Chef something with what was left in the fridge. And he always did it with the utmost level of give-a-shits he could, embodying the true spirit of an Iron Chef. John taught me a passion for food and was a big reason why I entered the restaurant industry. The impact from that career choice is still felt throughout my life today, both at home and at work. I was still living with John when he started into something new. He decided to finally do something everyone had always told him to do. Try stand-up. As was usual for him, John was pretty balls up to the wall at the beginning over this new shiny thing. He bought books about it and dove into the theory and philosophy, scratching away on a notepad. His friend Anders, he kind of unofficially assigned as his comedy critic to keep him honest. It was obvious even then that John wasn't fucking around. The shit was serious. And he was good, nearly right off the bat, and kept chipping away and improving his shtick, driven by his desire not to fail, not to disappoint anyone. And anyone who has ever sat down with him for a meal he made, if he ever actually sat down to eat it, knows that John is his hardest critic and would not take a compliment. And to that point, John would absolutely hate this night. His life, all wrapped up in a Hollywood bowl, his compliments, and he would probably say something like, "Good thing I'm already dead." For all of us here who have been lucky enough to know him and his dark sense of humor, whether it was through the food industry, the comedy scene, or some other means, this room is full today because John lived a full and generous life without giving a shit about societal norms. For those with love for his deepest, darkest humor, this needn't be said, nor if you've ever been wished a happy birthday by John on Facebook. But for those of you who have experienced neither, please know it's with love when I say this. Way to not die in the womb.
There's a lot of people from all over the world that wanted to be here tonight and they couldn't. We have a couple videos and we're going to play one now from Aisha Alpha. And Spacebar.
Okay, so I've started and stopped this video many times trying to get out what it is that I loved about John, and it's hard because I start ugly crying, and nobody needs that. And it's hard sometimes to put into words a whole amazing person. So I've picked out a few things that I really love, and I'm happy and grateful about. Number one, whenever John would call me, I would pick up the phone, and all I would hear was, "Hello!" For as long as his breath would manage. Sometimes he would stop, take another breath, and continue. And I don't know why I thought that was just so funny, and he never stopped, and it was just the best. Sometimes he would just leave me a message of just hello, and then I would have to call him back to see what the hell he was calling me for in the first place. I got many text messages that were just hello with lots of O's. And that was so funny. I don't know why. It's so dumb, but so funny, and that was John to me. Simple things, simple childish things that were like, just never stop, always push the joke further. Number two, I got to introduce him to my kid, which was very special. And it felt weird to bring a 5.5-week-old into this strange place where he had no clue where he was going or what was happening. And I just placed him on the chest and in the arms of like a middle-aged, naked white dude. That was John Duff. And Sule, my son, like adored him, smiled, stared at him. And John adored him back. He was joyful and happy, and he didn't call my baby names. And I was like, what the heck, man? You call everybody names. You're new to everybody. You're showing up. But he didn't. He just held him, and he was like, he's gorgeous, he's beautiful. It was a really beautiful time. And Sule got to visit with John twice before he passed, which was so wonderful. And not only did Sule get to visit with John, but John held me on his chest after Sule was put in his car seat and pretended to breastfeed me. Number three, John B. Duff at the back of the room on the mic at the Cavern is one of my all-time favorite things in comedy as a whole. And I already missed that before because Cavern wasn't happening. But I will miss that more now. And times when I would go to the Cavern just to hang out because I had no new material and didn't have anything to work on, and John would say, you're here, get up on stage, say something, we'll talk, we'll banter, you and I, you'll figure something out, it'll be fun, it'll be funny. And he was right, it always was, it was always funny. And that helped me develop new jokes out of nothing, which is hard for me. And sometimes I had a joke that I wanted to get through, and John would interrupt right before I was the punchline. And like with this little giggle and his weird, inappropriate comments or questions. Like I remember one time talking about something, he's like, well, how big are your labia? Did they get stuck in a bicycle spoke? And I hope that joke made everyone uncomfortable. Labia. But I love that. There's so many jokes that I got because of him that I would have never found to be funny or would have never tried to work out on stage were it not for his pesky meddling on that mic in the back. I love that John loved to cook and was a great cook. I love that he took pride in that. I love that he took pride in himself and his integrity. If there's one thing you knew about John, it's that what he said he meant. And sometimes he didn't agree with it, and that didn't really matter to him. in the way of changing to make everyone happy. And that is something I've learned to admire and try to emulate. He had a brand, grumpy, inappropriate, dark curmudgeon who had cancer a bunch. But knowing who you are and not being ashamed of it, but being proud of it, and knowing where you fit in and exploring that to the max is something that I learned from John being Duff. Now, were he here, he would make fun of me for all the sappiness, call me names, and then we would have a beer. So I would just like to say, you're all pussies, let's go have a beer. Love you all.
I believe we're going to hear from Shelley Connor now. Yeah? Okay. Great. Big round of applause.
Today started with a lot of day drinking to get through this speech that I just finished writing this morning. Because after John passed, we packed up his stuff and I brought it home, left it in the dining room, and it stayed there till I think 2 days ago. And then I realized, oh shit. Okay. No, that's coming. I realized like the reality of today was kind of setting in. So, I've known John most of my life. We grew up in the same neighborhood. We went to the same elementary school, the same high school, and he's just kind of always somebody who's been there. Whether we were together, he lived here or lived in Vancouver, he's just always been a phone call away or just somebody who's always been there. Our friend group at Grant Park High School was pretty big. There was a lot of us. We were like a bunch of grade 9 girls and then a bunch of 17-year-old boys. So it worked out really well. We called him Papa Smurf and he took care of us. He bought us beer. And he took me to my first punk show at Wellington's. And he kept us fully entertained at draft nights at the Albert. You'd get your big thing of draft and your glasses, and we'd all drink, and he'd take this draft glass to each one at the table, take it and take a chunk, bite a chunk out of it, and slam it down the table, so the lady would come to pick up all of our glasses, and there'd be all these bites taking of the glasses. I don't know, it's just what he does. That's John. There's honestly a million stories from back then, but I don't want John to know them. It's Big John, yeah. It's just, you don't need to know that many. But yeah, too many to list. But when eventually John moved off to Vancouver, and I think he was around 18, or yeah, probably around 18, I was around 16, and my best friend at the time, Jolene, and I decided to take a train to stay with John at his brother Steve's house. And we were going to see the Violent Femmes. John had us tickets. It was so fun. It was great. And we went back to Steve's, and we had a few days just to drive around. And Steve was nice enough to lend John his Cadillac, which I thought was just a car, whatever. So we're in his Cadillac, driving around. We go to the beach. We went to the store, bought a big bag of avocados. I threw them in the back seat, and I'm not sure why they were in the back seat and why John was sitting in the back seat. Now that I'm telling this, was one of us driving Steve's car? Steve, I hope not, because that probably wouldn't have gone over very well. Well, John ended up sitting on this big bag of avocados and left a big green stain on his butt and a huge green avocado stain on Steve's seat of his favorite Cadillac. So, all this coming together, no, please, because I don't know how to work this. I was able to apologize to Steve like 30 years later for that incident of the avocados. John moving to Vancouver was pretty big. It was a great excuse to go there to visit him and see bands, and also a great excuse to write long letters. So that's how we communicated, because there was no email. So it was constant back and forth letters, phone calls. I hid so many phone bills from my mom, because back then there was no phone plans for long distance, so we'd get like an $80, $90 phone bill. I'd do, shit. So I'd hide it to the next week to try and save up some money to pay off the phone bill for John. It's the conversations with John and whoever else I had over so they could talk with him. We talked on and off, but kind of, life happens and you see each other for things like weddings and funerals and special occasions like that. And always not talking, but just kind of, you just do your thing. And then this first bout of cancer came, and of course you touch base with somebody when they're ill, and we went out for coffee and just caught up a little bit, and then moved on, and then I had my own bout with cancer, and he was the first one to call me and send me a message, and Odd Block was just starting then, so he had us tickets, my husband and I tickets, right there to watch the first Odd Block night, which was fantastic. He stayed in touch through my entire battle, and always just stupid texts that meant nothing, just ridiculousness, of course. Sorry, a second. I haven't actually cried about this yet, so it's probably going to come soon. So we'll fast forward to John being in Health Science Center. He put out a call. He needed grip tape for his phone because it kept on sliding off the bed. So I'm like, I can do that. I'll get it. So I come with what I thought was grip tape. And that's the first time he called me a retard. He's like, who doesn't know what grip tape is? I'm like, well, okay, so I went and got him the right tape. And he's like, can you give me some Kit Kats while you're out? And that's when it all, that's where it went from there. So I got the grip tape, got the Kit Kats, and then I made him a little puppet of a little mini John, and then there was hot dogs, and then you get the occasional phone call, hey Shelbo, did you see the KFC commercial? No, tell me about it, John, and then you get the detailed list of what he wanted on his food. But before he left HSC, he gave me his bank card, and he said, I need you to do something for me. And this was after calling me names and whatever. He wanted me to go out and buy all the nurses gift cards from Tim Hortons, because he felt so bad because he was so big. When they were trying to help him walking, he'd fall and he'd hurt them. And he was in tears because these people, he just felt so bad, so he wanted to do something little for them. So, of course, he let me do that. And then eventually the move to Poseidon came. And that was an awful place. The first time I visited there, it was so overwhelming. I guess the reality of the situation was kind of setting in then about what this really meant, and I just thought I'll just get him a few little things, and I found that stupid cat, 3D cat thing from the dollar store, and he's just, his eyes lit up. He was so happy, and we did the photo shoot and whatever, and he loved it so much. His Homer, which is hanging on my wall right now at home. It's the best $4 I've ever spent. He appreciated absolutely everything we did for him, whether it was my husband taking him to Nanaimo bars, and he'd say, just a touch of orange and it'd be perfect. So we'd go home and we'd bake it, chop it up into little bite-sized pieces, and the whole frickin' pan of Nanaimo bars was gone by the next day. He'd always say, like, what did I do to get so lucky to have everybody doing all these things for me? And he didn't deserve all this, which is so ridiculous. And I just kind of said, well, since I've got you as a captive audience now, I just thought I'd ask him all kinds of stupid questions and just to pass time. So I'd ask him about his favorite comedy moments and his planning his wedding. And even if he really didn't think it was going to happen, we just sat there, we talked about the food that he'd wanted and where he'd want it to be. He talked about his favorite roller coasters, We talked about maybe getting the Make-A-Wish Foundation to send him to on that new Harry Potter ride or whatever it was. So it was the best place. I want to go there again. And that was like a month and a half ago. Like, I don't know if they do that for 50-year-olds. Look into it. There's so many times that I'd be there with Crystal, also being called a retard again, because we couldn't hook up his TV, and he'd be like, "Teddy, come help me. I'm surrounded by idiots." I'm like, yeah, that's us. I'd do it again in a heartbeat, though, that's for sure. But my favorite moments with John were just the last few weeks of his life. I went, or actually no, just before Christmas. I could tell that Micro was just there, Micro being Crystal, because the place was so clean, and he had all his Christmas decorations up and the lights were off. We put on that fake fireplace, and he was just sitting there. It was warm and clean, and everything was just perfect. And he said, "Shelbo, go get my Jets hoodie." And I said, "Your Jets hoodie?" He said, "The nurses said it's not there, but I want to wear my Jets hoodie." And I'm like, you've seen him in the hospital, you know how hard it would be to put a hoodie on him. So I'm like, okay, I'll go get it. So we worked and we put the hoodie over him and on his arms, and it went up to about here, because I couldn't physically lift him up. And he put the hood up, or I put the hood up for him, and he cuddled in and he closed his eyes and he says, "It's just perfect, Shelbo, it's just perfect." And he just knew he was at peace, and he was just calm, and he just seemed, I guess not happy, but just peaceful. And then, I guess about a week before he passed, Ted and Paul was in town, and I was meeting Paul and Ted there, and I got there a bit early, and I just put music on, the stuff we listened to when we were kids, like Lou Reed and David Bowie and Robin Hitchcock, and he was able to sing along. He barely could open his eyes, could barely have a conversation with you, but he knew the words to the songs until he didn't want to listen anymore. He said, shut that off, it's too loud. So I did. But it's those little moments like that. And then finally, of course, that phone call on the Sunday saying things aren't going well. So we all rush down there and spend that time with them, and just know, like, the hand squeezes, and when you'd hear your voice, and how much I know how happy he was that we were all there. Then I thought, okay, so the next day, Monday morning, I'll go before work, say a quick hello, and then go back in the afternoon. And of course, needless to say, I got a parking ticket that day, because it wasn't 1 hour parking. And I just want to say a huge thank you to John and family. Thank you so much for letting me be part of that. It was really, it was the hardest, it was awful, but at the same time it was just such an honor to be there with him and with you all. Okay, I think I'm going to stop now. Thank you.
All right, so in true John B. Duff fashion, the show started late and is going to go long. We have a couple, just 2 more speakers now, and then there will be food and whatnot in the back. But okay, please welcome up Caprice and Tyson Keller.
Hi. I'm John's cousin, Caprice. Wee John, which we called him in the family, was my big cousin. We grew up together. We were pretty close. My brother Tyson and I would go to my Auntie Crystal and Uncle John's almost every day because they would babysit us before and after school. We spent every summer with them. So we were really close. We really grew up as a close family, which I'm so grateful for. I just want people to know that John was always funny. Even as a kid, he was always funny. He was always big personality. He was always up for something. He was always getting us in trouble. And I like to think that we all got in trouble just because of John. It was all about him. John and I had this thing, because we were close in age. I am younger than him, just so you know. But we would bug each other a lot. Like I really do remember it started with the Flintstones. Like I like the Flintstones, so he would bug me about Fred Flintstone running past the same thing every time in the house. And then I would bug him about Hercules that played at lunchtime because I hated that little newt or whatever. So we would always argue about that and fight about it. Then I remember one day at lunch, we were talking about our middle names. And so we found out that John's middle name was Bremner, right? It's Bremner. So then I was going, Bremnerd, you're such a Bremnerd. And he got so mad, like he hated it. He wouldn't tell anybody his middle name. And Bremnerd. So we were running around the house and I was calling him a Bremnerd, and he turned around and he said, disco's dead, punk rocks. And that just hurt me so much because I loved Diana Ross at the time. And I was so pissed off. So then I chased him and we were running up and down the stairs to his bedroom. And yeah, so we would just go on like that a lot. But then John played The Clash for me. I like to think, well, John, he influenced my taste in music. And I think I have a good taste in music. But really, we bonded even more so in our teens over music. The Clash, the Sex Pistols. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I was still really upset about Diana Ross, but I was getting used to it. U2 War, that was the first U2 album that I heard in his room with him, and I was in love with U2. When I turned 18, I thought I was really cool, and I was the only one in school that liked U2 apparently, and John lent me his Sunday Bloody Sunday t-shirt, and I crimped my hair, and I had ripped jeans, and I just thought I was so cool, but I was so proud I had that t-shirt, but he let me keep it because he knew that it meant a lot to me. Yeah, he introduced me to Violent Femmes, the Pogues, the Pixies, R.E.M. We went to a lot of gigs together. As you know, John liked music. We went to an R.E.M. concert in Minneapolis when we were in university. And since his passing, a couple people have texted me through Facebook and said, remember when we went to the show in Minneapolis and how funny he was? Like, John was funny. I was just laying back in the hotel room and John was like throwing stuff out the hotel window, and I don't know, he was just making people laugh, and I was like, yeah, that's my cousin. He's awesome. And then the Pixies were, I don't know when it was, the Pixies came here to Winnipeg and I had seen them. He didn't get to see them, I don't think. He had just gotten sick his first time then. So he phoned me and he said, meet me at Bar Italia. And I'm like, oh, I got to work tomorrow. I don't want to go to Bar Italia. He's like, meet me at Bar Italia. I have something to ask you. So Pixies were playing in Saskatoon. Whatever, the next couple of days, you gotta come, let's go. I'm like, well, how are we gonna get there? Like, I have to work, like, you know, me being all logical, and John was just like, let's go, fuck, like, come on, what do you have to do? I'll drive. And I'm like, whoa, like, I am not driving with you. You're the worst driver. Anyways, Tyson and I and John went.
We thought we were gonna die.
Yeah. We went to the Pixie show. John drove so fast. Like, Tyson and I were looking at each other. I was laying in the back. It was like a truck thing that he had. I was laying with, it really was terrifying. And he would not listen. I was like, John, like, fucking slow down already. late. He's like, no, come on, we gotta get there. It's gonna be fine. We'll have some beers. And he got stopped. We got stopped by the police.
And he tried to talk out of a ticket. Remember? He was
Yeah.
talking to the RCMP.
Yeah.
He was on. Like they loved him. And,
Yeah. And he still got a
it's a
ticket.
$400 ticket. He only had to pay $150 or something.
Yeah, like, so the trip cost John about $600 to $700 because he got stopped twice on highway number 1. And he wouldn't listen, he just didn't care. Like, he wouldn't listen to us, he got tickets, like nothing. He just wanted to go and have fun. And we did, and eat McDonald's. We had a ton of fun. I'm so glad we went, and he talked me into it. We also saw the Pogues together in Vancouver. And I don't know, it was just awesome. Like he was just my buddy. He was my buddy in Vancouver when I lived there. He worked a lot, but we'd go out a lot too. And also, other people have said this about John, that he was very loyal and he was very protective of his people. So, like even in high school, I could never get a freaking boyfriend when John was around. Like he hated everybody. Oh, Chris, a fucking loser. Like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, oh, come on. Like, he's cute or he's nice or whatever. And he was right, obviously, but when we lived in Vancouver, I'd go to his house sometimes and he'd make me dinner. Like he was off at the restaurant, this nice restaurant he worked at, but he would make me and whatever friend I had with me, he'd make us these wonderful dinners. And I went one time a hockey game. I don't know anything about hockey, and that pissed him off too, but I guess Vancouver won or something, and the city went crazy. I think there was lots of looting and stuff. But John wouldn't let me go home, and I'm like, I have to go home, but he was so worried about me. He walked me to Robson because he lived downtown, and he would only let me get a cab. He talked to the cabbie and said, like, you need to get her home. He was very, very protective. And I was always acting all embarrassed, but I kind of really wasn't. I was always very proud of the fact that my big cousin John was always protecting me. And when Stephen, his older brother Stephen, and we'd go for drinks, of course, like no guy could come near me. I was just like, fuck John, and he's like, you're a fucking loser. Like, why are you always with these guys? Anyways, we would have tons of fun again, and he would send me home in a taxi. Like, I could never take a bus. It was always tons of fun being out with him, and I always felt very protected. I hired a girl at work about 6 years ago, and I don't know, she came in late one time and she was hungover, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you can't be hungover at work. And she's like, oh, I was at this stand-up comedy thing last night, and I went on stage, and I'm like, oh, my cousin runs that. And she's like, John? I'm like, yeah. She's like, oh my God, you're John's cousin? And I was like, yeah, he's my cousin. And she's like, I'm so scared of him, but I want him to like me so much. So I was like, I didn't realize he was that big in the comedy scene in Winnipeg. He did invite me and my partner to, who he likes. He liked my partner, by the way. The only person ever that I dated. I hope. And he invited us to the Odd Block show, and I thought it was great. I was so impressed. I didn't know the magnitude he had in the city with comedy and in his shows, and I was really impressed. And the last show he did, him and his friends in the show, they went outside, they got really, really stoned, and then they came in and did a show. They were doing stand-up, and they were so freaked out they couldn't really do much. And it was hilarious. Like, it was just hilarious. Anyways, he was my cousin who just made me laugh, and who I always felt just so good being around, and so proud of him. And you know, in the last 10 years, we didn't really spend a lot of time together, and your lives go a different way, and I really regret that. But for the first 30 years, I had John in my life a lot, and I'm so proud of him, and I'm so grateful that he was part of my life. And I'm going to miss him, and I love him. And I'm so proud John was my big cousin.
So I just have one quick story about John when we were kids. I always looked up to him like a big brother, and he would always take me to movies. He loved movies, and we'd take the bus downtown or wherever. So one time we went to Polo Park and saw a movie there. We were walking out, and the Red River Rex was playing next door. So John's like, why don't we go to the Red River Rex, just hang out? I'm like, John, we don't have any cash. He's like, don't worry about it, we'll just bump some money off some people. I'm like, what? Okay, well, whatever. So I just follow his lead, and he's standing there and he's talking some story to some people, and finally we got a few bucks and we got in there. We're walking around and I lost John. John's like older than I am. We're like little kids and stuff, and I'm like started crying, and I found security people, and they took me to the office and called my mom, and okay, we'll get you home, don't worry about it. And as we're walking out, John sees me, he's like, oh my God. I'm like, where were you? I'm like, oh, I called my mom, shit. And that's how John was, just always looking out for you, and love you, John, thank you.
All right, we got one more comedy friend, and then a short video, and then just a thank you from the family. And yeah, please give a big warm round of applause for the very funny Ben Walker.
How's everyone doing tonight? I don't know, it is an immense privilege to be able to say a few words about John and my relationship with him. I first met John near the end of 2009 when he was hosting his weekly Sunday show at the Cavern. And I was a new comic, his first time going on stage there, and it was super packed, shocking, and it was super packed, and so when I get there, there's so many comics, and John's like, okay, you're new, you get 1 minute stand up at the end of the night, you do the 1 minute tonight, you gotta come back the next week and do 5 minutes. So I waited till midnight, finally got on to my 1 minute, it was amazing, and then I went back the next week, and I showed up early, and I'm excited, here I go, I'm gonna get my 5 minutes, and 30 comics go by, it's midnight again, I'm like, oh, excuse me, sir, remember when you told me I got a 5 minutes? He's like, oh yeah, sorry, you got 1 minute again. I'm like, yeah, but you told me I get a longer set. No, you get 1 minute. And that's the first impression I had of John. I'm like, I couldn't get mad at him though. John had the ability to get like, maybe because he smelled so damn amazing. I don't know why I couldn't get mad. But that was the first impression. That was John to me. He was a gift because like, he's a gift when you're older. It's tough to meet lifelong friends that you felt you've known your whole life. So I was a bit older. He was a bit older. It's just like, I can't pinpoint what we just were. And like, he was passionate about comedy. He was passionate about being a trusted, loyal friend more than everything. Like I showed up at comedians' barbecues, like at Keener's place. He'd often do the cooking as soon as he'd arrive. He showed up for me personally when he trusted me enough first year to give me my first show. And in true John fashion, I ran that show into the ground like he showed me. Duff, I don't know, he's just, it's tough to explain, because like, one time he was selling tickets to a show, he actually gave me more than 1 day's notice, and, call back, and he gave me more than 1 day's notice, so I went to go pick up these tickets at his place on Taylor, his apartment on Taylor, so like, when you go to somebody's apartment, you go pick it up, what's the buzz code? He's like, no, it's another place, let me know when you're here, I'll drop them from the 8th floor. So I go pick these tickets, I'm like, yeah, I'm here, he's like, hey, just walk across the grass, I'm standing there. Like Andy and Shawshank, just waiting here for tickets. So he drops these tickets, like, how lazy is this son of a bitch? And they're like, as these tickets are floating down, I'm like, oh, this guy's pretty efficient. It's so hard to get mad at, you know what I mean? Just a bag full of tickets and expired batteries. I'm like, thanks, Duff, for waiting. No, yeah, I mean, that's the thing about Duff, like, he frustrated you, but I don't know, he was just such a great friend, like, you knew you were stood with him, like, he was just so trustworthy, which is amazing to have, like, he's so loyal, like, even Odd Block, I've never seen him happier, than, besides dropping those tickets, than when he was at Odd Block, like, just roaming in between venues, just happy, he's just making sure everyone else is having a good time. That was always Duff, making sure everyone else is having a good time, maybe for himself, and even though we're playing pickup basketball, great rebounder, he was 6'4", great rebounder, terrible shooter, shot too much, but he was great. And he would sweat more than anybody. But what Duff would do for us, like he'd bring the towels and the Gatorade. He was always thinking of everybody else first, right? And also we started playing golf. And I don't think Duff had ever golfed. Maybe he had, but he was a gifted. He was a gifted comic. He was a decent athlete. Like he had some gifts. I just remember we're playing golf, and he didn't have any clubs. Like, hey Duff, you gotta get some clubs. Make sure though, like you're like 6'4", man. Like make sure you get some like clubs that fit. So he shows up in that red van, you know, his carrying dead body. He shows up with some clubs. Just 13 clubs in a coffin, just fucking rolling in. And first thing Duff does, he gets to the golf course. He's like, "Hey, here's a Percocet for your back." That was the kind of guy Duff was. He gives me a Percocet for my back. I don't even know I have a bad back. He just gives me a Percocet. And that's why, you know, he's always thinking of somebody before himself, because he uses that Percocet. And I see his clubs, and he got up to Kijiji. I think they're like some ladies' clubs, like this high. And he wouldn't need a Percocet after how many shots he had to take with those mini sticks over the course of 4 hours. I'm talking a lot of shit. Not that he was a terrible golfer, he was pretty bad, but he wasn't that bad. But his thing with Duff, he would insist, like, he was kind of his own world sometimes. He would insist on taking like 13 practice swings. And hitting like 4 balls like every time, you know what I mean? Like you're not supposed to do. Like he was like, we would all walk, and he would take a cart. You know when you drive, like usually like ahead of a walker? No, Duff was always like a hole behind us somehow in a cart. It would frustrate me, but at the end I was looking back, it's like, man, that's just more time I gotta hang out with Duff. You know what I mean? Like as much as he's frustrated you, man, looking back, like he's such a good friend. I miss him so much. I love you, Duff. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, Mark, you want to hit space bar on that computer there? We got one more video to play, and this is a pretty vulgar video.
I don't know if people know me. I'm John's friend, Chad, from the wonderful state of Minnesota, which is south of Canada. But what John always loved, and I thought would be a nice contribution, is he liked it when I'd wake up from a nap and just sing a song for him. So here it goes. His name is John Duff, baby. He was a big dude, and he liked huge muffs. Oh, the bigger the muff was, John loved big muffs. If it was big, he loved it. He loved it, oh yeah. Oh yeah, he loved muffs. That were big in a coal mine. Put your body tubs on. I don't know Bonnie Bear lyrics. I waited outside. I was talking on dope. John Duff loved muffs. He loved when they were huge, mama. The bigger the better. He put his whole hand in one, like a glove. John Duff wore muffs like gloves. Oh, baby. He loved to wear muffs like gloves. Hey, Duff. That was the thing I was gonna do, is dub-a-diddle-dub, and you farted in a coal mine. I wanted to do Hey Duff, and then I fucking blew it. Hey Duff, hey Duff. I love you, buddy. I miss you so much. I hope you like this song about huge pussies. And I hope I looked handsome. From my nap. Miss you, buddy.
As John always said, it's good to end on a song. Okay, we're just gonna have a final word from the family. Steve Duff, you wanna come up? Remember the Duff Clan.
you all for coming out. Quite something to see the impact that John's had on everybody's lives. I'm not going to bore you with a lot of stuff here. We've got food waiting outside for everybody. Just a couple of things. I'm Steve, John's brother from Vancouver, so a lot of you don't know me because I wasn't around for a lot of that time. And when John was 13, I thought, well, I'll bring him up to Vancouver and give him a little taste of the big city. So we're driving around Vancouver, and he's 13, and he was pretty tall kid at that time. And I said, well, I'm going to take you to a restaurant that makes such large portions you'll never ever eat it. He says, oh, I can eat it. I can eat anything. I have a huge appetite. I'm John B. Duff. So I take him to Fresco's on Davie in Vancouver. So somebody's been there, they know, right? So the mushroom burgers are like 4 feet tall and everything. So I said, so you think you can eat it all? He says, oh yeah. It's like, okay, here's the deal. If you eat it all, I'll pay. If you don't eat it all, you pay. So he's like, yeah, I can eat all this. So the poor kid starts it and he gets through the first portion. And then he's getting through the other portion, the next portion, still with vim and vigor. And then he's about halfway through and you can see he's slowing down. And so I'm sitting there, of course I know I'm going to pay, but I'm not going to let him know that. So he gets down to about the last quarter or third on his plate. And okay, don't worry about it. And he's like, well, you could have told me that 30 mouthfuls ago. So it was nice. So we went out to my place in White Rock, and I had a nice place there. And I had one of the first ever VCRs ever. My video club membership was number 17. I had a Betamax, and it had a pause button on it as the remote. That's literally all it did was pause. It had a 30-foot cable to pause. And the guy I got it from, he had some movies. He had like Superman 1 with Christopher Reeves, which I know John was a big fan of, and I don't know, Margaret Trudeau or Margaret or some screwed up Mark was in it. And so I said, here, you watch a movie, I've got to work tomorrow, I'm going to go to bed. So I go to bed and get up, go to work in the morning, and next day my phone rings. This is my mother. Said, Stephen, what are you doing to me, wee boy? What are you talking about? You're showing them porno. Porno? What are you talking about, porno? She says, deep throat. Well, it turned out he discovered one of the other videos that was in the kit. Unbeknownst to me, well, what an idiot. Then he goes and tells our mother. So I was just like, wow. So, but it's so wonderful to see the impact that he's made on everybody, and it's been phenomenal to be out here and all your support. So thank you all so much. We're going to have extend this through the course of the evening, and a lot of people that want to get up and say bits and their memories of John and just let it all go and loose. And this is a John night. We want this to be what his traditional special night as he would want it to be. So please feel free to do that and express yourself. However, try and keep your clothes on. And there's food out there. Help yourself, and please support the bar. The Park Theater has generously donated the venue, so please support the bar that's going to them. Make sure you tip the staff very well. Thank you so much to Tim and Ted and to Paul and to Shelley and to so many people that gave them all the support over the period of time. We really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, so there's food in the lobby, please go feed yourself, and if you want to come up and tell a story or a joke or anything like that, I'm just going to hang out here for a little bit. Just come see me, I'll put your name on a list or whatever, and we'll kind of do it that style. So one more round of applause for the man of the night, John B. Duff.
We're going to try and Bye.